Welcome to this conversation with Ed Tittel on the state of IT certification in 2010. This is Tim Warner with Pearson Technology Group here. I'm sure you've heard of Ed if you've been in the IT industry, and in particular in the IT certification field at all over the last dozen or more years. Ed Tittel's been writing about and training others on computing topics since the 1980s. He's contributed to over 140 computer books and written many thousands of web and magazine articles. Perhaps best known for creating the Exam Cram series of IT certification prep books, Ed writes regularly for Tom's Hardware, various Tech Target websites, and Inform IT. Ed, thanks a lot for taking the time to speak with us today.
Oh, Tim, as always, it's a pleasure.
Our first question does, of course, deals with those Exam Cram books. You headed up the Windows NT Exam Cram books when they were first published by Coriolis. So you're really the most qualified person on earth to discuss the evolution of the brand from the late 90s to today.
Well, if you wouldn't mind amending that to being one of the few who's qualified, I certainly would go along with that. I would think that a few other people might want to be included in that select group. At any rate, Exam Cram indeed was something that I cooked up in 1996 when I was studying for the MCSE exams on NT 351 and then NT 40. Pretty much the only thing that was available at the time was a class of books that I still like to call doorstops, you know, those great big giant hardbound books that teach you literally everything you need to know to pass an exam. As somebody who had a computer science degree and some considerable exposure to the field and yada, 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 I wanted a short, sweet, pointed book that would help me get ready for the exam and not much more than that. And that was the idea that led to the creation of the Exam Cram series. And I went to sell it after I created that idea, and numerous publishers turned me down before what at the time was a small upstart publishing firm, Coriolis, and alas is no more in business, decided to run with the idea. And boy, was I tickled when the first few months out of the gate in 1997, our initial release in that series was a 4-pack in a box of networking essentials, TCP/IP, Windows NT Workstation, and Windows NT Server all in a single package. And it started out the gate selling about 10,000 copies a month, which made everybody, including me, pretty darn happy.
A lot of our audience knows this from following my blog, but I certified initially back in 97, and I actually had that 4-pack, so I can certainly attest to the quality. And just like you said, Ed, the stripped-down nature, here's what you need to know to pass the exam. That's so important. Speaking of Microsoft certifications and their accompanying exams, how would you describe and what have your impressions been of the evolution of Microsoft certification back from those NT4 days to today with Windows Server 2008 and Windows 7?
Well, you know, I think that in a lot of ways what has happened with the Microsoft exam recapitulates and follows what the whole industry has been going through in the intervening 12 or 13 years, and that is where we started in those days was multiple choice, sometimes also called multiple guess exams, where you basically had to regurgitate really specific facts and capabilities of the environments on which you were being tested. And I think what's happened in the interim is that certification candidates and the program managers who create and run certification programs have all realized that what is really needed is some kind of testing that helps people develop the right kind of skills and knowledge to function well on the job, and that also allows the test makers to dig a little bit deeper into the troubleshooting skills and operational knowledge of various systems and capabilities that candidates bring to the test with them when they head to the testing center. And so, you know, one of the buzzwords in the certification field is something called performance-based testing, and really what that boils down to is creating a more or less realistic simulation, if not an outright runtime version of the environment that the candidates are being tested on, presenting them with certain scenarios or problems to solve, and then seeing how they do when it comes to figuring things out and making them work. So I think just as Microsoft exams have moved more steadily and decidedly in that direction, so also we've seen the exams from other outfits like Cisco and CompTIA and other big, hairy test/certification programs.
Right, and to that point of performance-based testing with simulation items, and then more recently with Microsoft, these virtual lab-based items, what tips can you offer our audience with regard to gaining that necessary hands-on experience with those technologies, especially if these folks aren't yet in the IT industry?
You know, it's in the test maker's best interest as well as in the test taker's best interest to actually roll up one's sleeves and dig into the technology. And to that end, the candidates really need to look around and see what kinds of tools are available to them. Individuals who sign up to take courses that Microsoft warrants, sort of under the Microsoft training umbrella, will actually get the software that they're being tested on when they go to take those courses. And if they look around carefully and closely, they can often find either trial versions, limited use versions, or outright giveaway items that are designed to help people prep for certification exams. So I think the real answer to your question is that you need to take the time and spend a little money to set up a lab. Probably these days a virtual lab is fine, which means that one or two moderately powered PCs are going to be all you need to do to get everything set up and run, and even to deal with things like Exchange or server clusters or other sort of equipment-intensive technologies. Put the stuff together, make sure you can get it working, and then start, digging into the exam objectives and the scenarios that are outlined in those exam objectives. Find the good online forums and information that's available for the test, and start digging into stuff and dealing with things that are going on. I would also strongly advocate buying practice tests from a reputable vendor like Boson or MeasureUp or Transcender or somebody like that, because those practice tests are going to put you in the situation and help you figure out what it is that you need to know how to do when you do roll up your sleeves, so that you'll be able to deal with the real thing when you head to the testing center to take your certification exam.
Good. I'd like to follow that up with a related question. You mentioned practice test providers like Boson and Transcender and MeasureUp, and even we at Pearson offer several practice exams. That brings up the question that I have: how important are test-taking and critical reasoning skills to IT certification success?
Well, as is the case with any kind of educational adventure, understanding how to work within the system and how to make the best of the trials and tribulations that you're going to be presented with in going through the educational process is very important. Given the shift from rote learning to performance-based testing, I think that, there's rather less emphasis now on memorization and sort of brute force mastery of a lot of subject matter, and now that's changed more to the kind of critical reasoning and problem-solving skills that you allude to in your question. And I think the old joke about how do you get to Carnegie Hall, practice, 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 is still probably very relevant to doing well.